What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NFL Week 6, Monday Night Football. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. Okay guys, in this video, I'm going to give you my top DFS picks for this Monday Night Football showdown between the Denver Broncos and the Los Angeles Chargers. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, NFL Week 6. Let's take a look at this Monday Night Football showdown between the Denver Broncos and the LA Chargers. So at the quarterback position, I think you could play either quarterback here tonight. So take a look at Russell Wilson from the Denver Broncos playing the LA Chargers, who have the 6th worst defense overall. They are middle of the pack defending opposing quarterbacks. Russell Wilson has averaged 16.1 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 3.4 rush attempts per game. He's going to be about 54% owned, projected at 17.9 fantasy points here tonight, and he's 10,000 DraftKings salary. Vegas thinks there's going to be 45.5 points scored in this game, with the Broncos trailing by 4.5. Now, Russell Wilson has scored 11, 28, and 9 fantasy points in the last 3 games. He got 4, 4, and 6 rush attempts in those games. So I like Russell Wilson here versus the LA Chargers. Now for the Chargers, you have Justin Herbert, and the Denver Broncos have been good, have a good defense overall. They've been good versus opposing quarterbacks, but Justin Herbert has averaged 20.8 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 3.2 rush attempts per game. He's going to be about 63% owned, projected at 20.1 fantasy points here tonight. He's 11,000 DraftKings salary, and Justin Herbert has scored 14, 24, and 15 fantasy points in the last 3 games, and he got 5, 4, and 1 rush attempts in those games. So I like Justin Herbert here versus the Denver Broncos. Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. So for the Chargers, the stud on the slate is Austin Ekeler, and he's facing a pretty good defense here in the Broncos. They've been good versus opposing running backs, but Austin Ekeler has averaged 23.3 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 12.2 rush attempts per game and 6.6 pass targets per game. He's going to be about 65% owned, projected at 19.6 fantasy points here in Week 6 or here tonight, and he's 11,400 DraftKings salary. So Austin Ekeler, he's so expensive because he scored 39, 35, and 13 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 16, 13, and 4 rush attempts on top of 4, 7, and 8 pass targets. So 20 touches the past 2 weeks, 35 plus fantasy points the last 2 weeks. He's on a roll. So I like Austin Ekeler here versus the Denver Broncos. Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching. If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal, all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won, and we'll send you $25 PayPal. So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you. Okay, now for the Denver Broncos, you got a couple options here. You got Melvin Gordon, who's questionable, but if he plays this game, which it looks like he might, I think he'll be a pretty decent option here. Melvin Gordon from the Denver Broncos, who are playing the Chargers, who have the 6th worst defense overall, and they give up the absolute most fantasy points to opposing running backs. So fantastic matchup for the Denver running backs. Melvin Gordon has averaged 8.8 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 10.4 rush attempts per game and 2.6 pass targets per game. He's going to be about 32% owned, projected at 12.8 fantasy points here tonight. He's 8,200 DraftKings salary, and Melvin Gordon has scored 13, 0, and 17 fantasy points in the last 3 games, off of 15, 3, and 12 rush attempts, on top of 3, 1, and 6 pass targets. So he got 18 touches last week, so if he's healthy and good to go, I think it makes him a pretty decent option at his price point. So I like Melvin Gordon here versus the LA Chargers. Now, if you want to save some salary at the running back position, take a look at Mike Boone from the Denver Broncos playing the LA Chargers, who we know are giving up the absolute most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Now, Mike Boone hasn't done much this season, but last game he scored 12 fantasy points off of 7 rush attempts and 3 pass targets. He's going to be about 14% owned, projected at 8.6 fantasy points here tonight. Only 4,800 DraftKings salary. So I think this is a good spot to save some salary. A guy who got 10 touches last game. We'll see how many touches he gets here tonight. But I like Mike Boone here versus the LA Chargers. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver position. So the stud on the slate for the LA Chargers is Mike Williams. Now the Broncos have been good versus opposing wide receivers, but Mike Williams has averaged 17.6 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 8.8 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 90% of the snaps, gonna be about 52% owned. Let me just check real quick. Yes, Keenan Allen has been ruled out, or actually he's doubtful to take the field versus the Broncos. So if Keenan Allen is out, that's going to boost the value of Mike Williams. That's why he's priced up. And Mike Williams is projected at 16.4 fantasy points here tonight. He is 10,600 DraftKings salary. Mike Williams has scored 26, 22, and 9 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 13, 11, and 6 pass targets. So I like Mike Williams here versus the Denver Broncos. Okay, let's take a look at a couple of the Broncos' top wide receivers.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL. NBA is right around the corner. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
You got Courtland Sutton from the Denver Broncos playing the Chargers, who have the 9th worst defense. They have the 6th worst defense overall, but they give up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. So you got a good matchup for these skill positions from the Broncos. So I wouldn't ignore these guys, even though they're not putting up monster numbers. Actually, Courtland Sutton has averaged 16 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 9.2 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 92% of the snaps, going to be about 53% owned, projected at 14.9 fantasy points here tonight, and he's only 8,400 DraftKings salary, so he looks a little underpriced for his matchup and his upside for all the targets that he's getting, 9-10 targets a game. So Courtland Sutton has scored 12, 16, and 18 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 11, 7, and 10 pass targets. So I like Courtland Sutton here versus the LA Chargers. Now I also like Jerry Jeudy from the Denver Broncos. He's averaging 10.5 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 5.8 pass targets per game. He's going to be about 35% owned, projected at 11.5 fantasy points here tonight. He's 7,000 DraftKings salary. Jerry Jeudy has scored 8, 15, and 4 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 8, 5, and 6 pass targets. So I like Jerry Jeudy here versus the LA Chargers. Okay, if you want to save some salary at the wide receiver position, take a look at Joshua Palmer from the LA Chargers. He's averaging 8.3 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 5.6 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 77% of the snaps, going to be about 31% owned, projected at 9.4 fantasy points here tonight. He's 5,800 DraftKings salary. Joshua Palmer has scored 5, 4, and 16 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 6, 1, and 9 pass targets. So I like Joshua Palmer here versus the Denver Broncos. You want to save even more salary? Take a look at DeAndre Carter for the Chargers. He's averaging 7 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 3.2 pass targets per game. He's on the field for 61% of the snaps, going to be about 27% owned, projected at 6.2 fantasy points here tonight. He's 2,600 DraftKings salary, and DeAndre Carter has scored 3, 3, and 6 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 2, 3, and 4 pass targets. So I like DeAndre Carter as a low salary option here versus the Denver Broncos. Okay, moving on to the tight end position. So I like Gerald Everett from the LA Chargers, and Gerald Everett has averaged 10.1 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 5.8 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 67% of the snaps, going to be about 33% owned, projected at 9.6 fantasy points here tonight. He's 5,600 DraftKings salary. Gerald Everett has scored 1, 17, and 5 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 3, 6, and 6 pass targets. So I like Gerald Everett here versus the Denver Broncos. Now, for the Denver Broncos, this guy is questionable, but he was limited in practice, so if he does play, take a look at Eric Saubert, and he's averaging 4.3 fantasy points per game on the season, only getting an average of 2.6 pass targets per game, but he scored 9 fantasy points off of 7 pass targets last game, going to be about 15% owned, only 2,000 DraftKings salary. So I like Eric Saubert as a sleeper pick or a low salary option here versus the LA Chargers.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite
player for this NFL slate.
I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again and good luck.